August 23, 1944. Isigny, Normandy. A thin mist clings to the hedgerows, and the metal carcass of a captured German Panther tank glistens cold under the morning sun. The air is still, unnaturally still, broken only by the distant crack of small arms fire from skirmishers miles away and the low murmur of engineers unloading heavy crates from a canvas-backed deuce-and-a-half truck. The earth here is torn and churned from weeks of combat. Crushed corn stalks and the acrid smell of burned fuel hang in the air. Captain Leonard J. Webb of the Ordnance Department stands with his boots sunk into the damp Norman soil, hands clasped behind his back. Sweat beads under his helmet despite the cool morning. In front of him, a team of technicians is bolting down a long firing sled for an M18 Hellcat turret assembly stripped from its chassis, today's test platform. Webb inhales deeply, tasting the metallic tang of cordite lingering from the previous day's calibration shots. He turns to the officers and NCOs assembled behind him. "Gentlemen," he says, voice steady but low, "today we fire the M93 for the first time in theater." A quiet ripple moves through the group. The silver-banded shell. The tungsten dart. The round that, if the reports from Aberdeen were true, could punch through the glacis of a Panther at 1,000 yards, something no American 76mm gun had ever been capable of. And for the tank crews fighting through Normandy's hedgerows earlier that summer, that lack of penetrating power had been a sentence, one that too many paid with their lives. A Panther brought down for dissection. The Panther sits 300 yards downrange, its turret frozen in a final, twisted arc as if still searching for American armor. Its Zimmerit-coated hull bears the scars of capture, 3 impact marks on the mantlet, a gouge along the left track guard, and a blackened entry wound low on the side armor where a bazooka team finally disabled it days earlier. The tank was dragged here by a pair of M5 tractors just yesterday, its interior cleared of charred debris so that engineers could expose the raw armor plate. Major Richard Levitt steps beside Webb, flipping open a small leather notebook. 75mm at 55 degrees, he mutters, tracing the angles with his gloved finger. "Still the nastiest frontal slope we've come up against." Webb nods. "Exactly why we are here." Behind them, a corporal opens a wooden crate with a pry bar. Inside, nestled in waxed paper, lie 20 M93 rounds, experimental, precious, almost mythic. They shimmer faintly in the morning light, long, slender, armor-piercing shot capped with a bright aluminum silver band around the base. Each tungsten carbide core represents metallurgy pushed to its limit, and strategic material strained close to exhaustion. The corporal whistles softly. "That's what all the fuss is about?" Webb's eyes tighten. "That little band is the most valuable half-inch of metal in this field. Ammunition that shouldn't exist. No one here needs a lecture to understand why. This is August 1944, America is fighting across 2 oceans, and tungsten is stretched thin across machine tools, cutting bits, armor-piercing bombs, and industrial dyes. The War Production Board fights bitterly over every pound. Weeks ago, when Webb's team requested just 200 pounds of the material for these field tests, the reply came back from Washington in terse, clipped language. Approved with extreme reluctance. Tungsten allocations at critical shortage levels. Use must be justified with combat results. In other words, make this worth it. Preparing the shot. Technical Sergeant Harlan Moss, Chief Ordnance Gunner for the test, climbs into the exposed Hellcat turret, wiping dust from the 76mm breech with a rag. He handles the M93 round with the kind of reverence usually reserved for holy relics. "Feels lighter than APC, he says to no one in particular. "Cause dents, jackets not," Levitt replies. "She flies fast." Moss slides the round home and locks the breech. Webb raises his hand. All observers clear. A dozen men scramble behind earthen berms. A cameraman cranks his bell and amp, howl, ready to capture the moment engineers back in the States have been waiting months to see. The range officer gives a sharp nod. Fire when ready. The first impact. The world seems to tighten into a single point as Moss squeezes the trigger. Boom. The Hellcat recoils on its sled, dirt spraying from the ties securing it. A hard supersonic crack snaps across the field, sharper, meaner than the usual AP rounds. Half a second later. Clang, crack. The impact rings out like a church bell struck with a sledgehammer. A fist-sized plume of armor fragments bursts from the Panther's upper glacis. The round ricochets inside the hull, screaming off internal walls before burying into the engine firewall. No one speaks. Webb lowers his binoculars slowly. "Holy hell," murmurs one of the observers. Levitt scribbles notes furiously. "That's penetration. Full penetration. Clean as Aberdeen's charts." Another shell follows. Then another. At 600 yards, the tungsten round punches through the turret face, something the standard M62 APC simply cannot do. At 800 yards, it still bites deep enough to shatter weld seams. At 1,000 yards, the moment everyone has been waiting for, the M93 hits just left of the driver's visor and tears straight through the Panther's noseplate, showering the interior with molten armor flakes. The engineers cheer. The cameraman keeps rolling, hands shaking from excitement. Webb exhales, letting the truth settle over him. This shell works. It finally works. The Americans can now kill a Panther head-on. But there's a bitter edge. Levitt closes his notebook and turns to Webb with a look that's as heavy as the tungsten core inside the round. "Do you know how many of these we'll get next month?" Webb nods grimly. 1,000. 1,000 rounds, for an entire front. For all the 76mm Shermans, all the M18 Hellcats, all the tank destroyer battalions fighting their way toward Germany. 1,000 rounds in a war where hundreds of tanks clash every week. 1,000 rounds to solve a problem that has already killed thousands of American tankers. Moss dismounts from the turret and wipes sweat from his brow. "So we've got a round that can finally crack a Panther." He looks at Webb. "And not enough metal to make it matter?" Webb doesn't answer. He doesn't have to. The men who needed this months ago. The breeze shifts, carrying with it the faint distant rumble of artillery from the Falaise pocket, where scattered German armor still fights in desperate retreat. The men here at Isigny all know crews out there, friends, classmates from training, comrades they'd met only weeks before. Many of those men are dead because their Shermans couldn't penetrate a Panther from the front. Some never even had a chance to fire back. Levitt closes the crate of remaining M93 rounds. "They'll ration every shot," he says. "Command will say they must be used only on point-blank encounters, when absolutely necessary." Webb nods. "They'll call them precious metal ammunition." Hell, they already do. The truth settles over the test team like a cold fog. They have just watched a revolution, a technological leap that could reshape armored warfare. But it will not arrive in time for many of the men still fighting across France. And yet, history has shifted. Even as they pack up the equipment, measure armor plugs, and chalk penetration points on the Panther's hull, there's a current of quiet electricity among the officers, something close to awe. Because today's tests have proven something the ordnance men suspected but never dared assume. Tungsten ammunition can change the battlefield. Not in theory. Not in laboratory trials. But here, in Normandy, against real German armor. The M93 is no longer an experiment. It is the future. And though the war has already turned a corner in France, the next 9 months, from the Lorraine fighting to the Siegfried Line and deep into Germany, will test every assumption the army holds about firepower, logistics, and the cold arithmetic of industrial production. Far behind the front lines, the War Production Board will scramble to find more tungsten. Factories will redline furnaces to build more penetrators. Battalion commanders will beg for more shells than they will ever receive. And tankers, men like those of the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, and officers like Lieutenant Colonel Wilson M. Hawkins, will soon discover whether the miracle they are witnessing today will reach them in time to matter. As the sun climbs over the hedgerows and the men at Isigny finish cataloguing the day's results, a final crack echoes from the now silent Panther hull as a piece of spalled armor gives way and falls to the floor. The tank is dead. Truly dead. And for the first time, killed by an American shell. Somewhere west of St. Lo. A Sherman tank of the 3rd Armored Division claws through a narrow Normandy lane, turret scraping against hedgerow branches, engine growling with heat and strain. The air is suffocating inside the steel shell. Diesel fumes. Sweat. Hot metal. The gunner, Private First Class Raymond Dole, squints through the M70 sight, adjusting for the heavy trembling of the tank. His loader, Corporal James Jimmy Rollins, sits with both hands clamped around a 76mm M62 APC shell, standard American armor-piercing ammunition. Around that, he knows, cannot guarantee a kill on a Panther unless the crew gets dangerously close. Dole wipes his forehead and mutters, "Why do they always get the long guns?" "Because Jerry doesn't skimp on steel," Rollins answers. Outside, the hedgerows loom high, walls of thick earth and roots 3 feet deep. Any German gunner hidden within them could fire down at the Sherman from an angle that defeats even its modest frontal armor. The tank inches forward, every man listening for the telltale snap of an ambush. The radio cracks. "Panther, Panther, Panther." 11 o'clock, 400 yards, behind the stone farmhouse. The commander's voice sharpens. "Gunner, traverse left. Loader, APC ready." Rollins rams the M62 home, slams the breech shut. "Up." But Dole hesitates. "Sir? 400 yards? On the glacis?" His voice trembles. He knows the numbers. At this range, the standard round will shatter or ricochet unless he hits a vision block, a mantlet curve, or a lucky angle. "Take the shot," the commander barks. Dole exhales. The crosshairs settle. He squeezes the trigger. Boom. The Sherman rocks back. The round sails across the field and detonates in a useless spray of sparks off the Panther's sloped nose. The German tank swings its turret, almost leisurely, as if irritated by a fly. Rollins curses. "Load another." But the Panther fires first. Crack, whoom. A white-hot lance of light tears across the field. The Sherman shudders, armor ringing like a church bell. A fist-sized crater appears on the front hull where the German 75mm round has struck, penetration avoided only because of a fortunate angle and the hedgerow mound partially covering the Sherman's lower plate. The commander yells. "Reverse. Smoke. Move." As the driver throws the tank into reverse, branches claw at the turret. Rollins frantically shoves another M62 into the breach, but the commander pulls Dole off the gun. "No more shots, Ray. We're getting out of here." Dole grips the handrails, shaking with adrenaline and frustration. He whispers what thousands of American tankers had whispered that summer. "Why the hell don't we have anything that can kill that thing?" Normandy's terrible math. The problem wasn't bravery. It wasn't tactics. It was physics and industry. Panther glacis armor, 80mm at 55 degrees, effectively closer to 140mm of vertical armor. Sherman 76mm gun with M62 APC, penetration against sloped armor at 400 yards, inadequate. Meaning, the Americans had to flank a Panther to kill it. The Germans did not. This brutal asymmetry ruled the Normandy hedgerows. Colonel John S. Wood, commanding the 4th Armored Division, once wrote that German tanks stood like great mailed knights in the lanes, daring the Americans to approach head-on. For crews like Dole and Rollins, the reality was even simpler. If he sees me first, I die first. The absence that killed. What the tankers did not know, could not have known, was that back in the United States, at the very same time they were fighting through the Bocage, ordnance engineers had been pleading for tungsten allocations for months. Requests denied. Requests stalled. Requests delayed. Every pound of tungsten had multiple wartime masters. Asterisk armor-piercing aircraft rounds. Asterisk industrial lathe bits. Asterisk cutting dies for shipbuilding. Asterisk penetrators for anti-tank artillery. Asterisk turbine tooling. Asterisk bomb fuses. Asterisk Navy requirements. Asterisk Lend-Lease commitments. The War Production Board had become a battlefield in its own right, fought not with tanks but ledgers and priority charts. And while those bureaucratic battles raged in offices thousands of miles away, Dole's tank limped back toward the battalion assembly point, turret jammed, nerves shattered, and the crew inside covered in dust shaken loose from the Sherman ceiling. What tankers wanted vs. what they had. That night, the 3rd Armored Division's company maintenance tents buzzed with quiet anger. On an ammunition top beside Rollins' tank lay. Asterisk 76mm APC, M62. Asterisk 76mm APC-BC, in short supply. Asterisk 76mm He for infantry support. Asterisk a handful of white phosphorus rounds. What was missing was the kind of ammunition that could change everything. 76mm HVAP, high-velocity armor piercing. The M93. But in July 1944, not a single round of it would reach Normandy tank crews. Not one. Rollins picked up an M62 and let it fall back into the crate with a dull clank. They tell us it's all science and factories. I don't care, he muttered. I just want something that works. And across the firelit hedgerow camp, dozens, hundreds, of other American tankers felt the same. The origins of a promise. Back in the United States, the M93 project had begun in 1943 at the heart of American metallurgy labs, at the Carnegie Institute of Technology, the Watertown Arsenal, and the Frankfurt Arsenal. The idea was elegant. Create a shot so dense, so hard, and so small that velocity alone would turn it into a steel-punching dart. The key was tungsten carbide. The obstacle was everything else. Factories needed new tooling to shape tungsten cores. Steel jackets cracked during heat treatment. Sabot designs failed under stress. Ballistic stability wobbled at high velocity. And the biggest problem of all? The United States simply didn't have enough tungsten to produce these rounds at scale. America imported over 90% of its tungsten. Shipments from China were unreliable. Stockpiles were thin. And the Pacific War consumed most of what America had. So while Dole's Sherman retreated from a Panther it could not kill, a different kind of battle was raging in Washington, one that would determine the fate of every armored crew in Europe. The news reaches the front. Nearly a month after the Isigny tests, the ones Webb oversaw, the ones that proved that a silver-banded tungsten penetrator could kill a Panther head-on, rumors drifted through the armored divisions. Around a mess tent near Le Mesnil-Busnel, a lieutenant from 12th Armored told Rollins. They say ordnance found a round that can punch the Panther from the front. Rollins nearly dropped his cup of coffee. What? Real deal. Tungsten core. High velocity. They call it HVAP. Dole shook his head. Yeah? How many we getting? The lieutenant frowned, lowering his voice. I heard they're making less than 1,000 a month. Dole laughed bitterly. Then that ain't helping us. Rollins nodded. And not fast enough to help the boys who died in July. The table fell quiet. They all knew men who had died in July. A month too late for too many. The M93 existed. It worked. It was, without question, the most important anti-tank ammunition the United States had created during the war. And yet, Normandy was nearly over. St. Lo had fallen. The breakout was underway. The German armor that had ravaged the Americans in June and July was now scrambling eastward. The tungsten miracle had arrived? But after the worst of the Sherman Panther mismatch had already been paid for in blood. Ahead lay the battles of the Lorraine campaign. Lunéville. Aricourt. The Moselle crossings. The bitter autumn fighting that would define whether the tungsten revolution reached the field in time to matter. Because soon, very soon, the men of the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion would experience firsthand what the M93 could do when it did reach the front lines. And what it could not do when supply faltered. The story was about to shift from scarcity to combat. September 18, 1944. Near Lunéville, France. Dawn breaks cold and grey over the rolling fields of the Lorraine countryside. Fog clings in sheets across the low ground, hiding shapes, swallowing sound, masking death. 5 M18 Hellcats from C Company, 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion lie in concealed hull defilade positions along a tree line facing a gentle rise roughly 1,200 yards to the east. Their engines idle quietly, cats waiting to pounce. Sergeant Harold Red Lambert, commander of Hellcat C-23, lifts his binoculars again, wiping condensation from the lenses. He peers through the drifting fog, searching, listening. The sudden clatter of treads in the distance makes him tense. Movement. East Ridge. Sounds heavy, very heavy. His driver, Private Eddie Hartman, freezes mid-bite of a field ration. Panthers? Lambert lowers the glasses and exhales through his nose. Panthers. The word chills everyone inside the thin-skinned Hellcat. They all know what a panther can do to them. They also know today is different. Because inside the ammunition racks of C-23 lie 3 rounds precious enough to be counted by hand. 76mm M93 HVAP. The silver-banded tungsten shells. Not many. Not enough. But for the first time, they have them. Corporal Frank de Soto, the loader, pats one of the silver-banded rounds as if touching a holy artifact. "Red, when do you want tungsten?" Lambert studies the fog again. "Not yet. Not until we see the whites of their damn Zimmerit." The Panthers advance. At 6:14, dark silhouettes begin to emerge through the mist, first 1, then 3, then 5. The Panthers of the German 111th Panzer Brigade. Their long 75mm L-70 guns look impossibly long, like spears. Their angular hulls rise above the morning haze like hunting predators. Lambert swallows hard. "All Hellcats, this is Red. Hold fire. Repeat, hold fire." The temptation is enormous. Every man remembers Normandy. Every man remembers how Panther Glacis armor shrugged off their best shots. But today, if they wait, today could be different. Lambert steadies his breathing. He raises the binoculars once more, watching the lead Panther roll to a halt, its commander scanning with field glasses. "De Soto," Lambert says quietly, "load HVAP." The loader grins grimly. "About damn time." He pulls a silver-banded round from the rack and slides it toward the breech. Its weight feels wrong, lighter than steel-cord AP, but its potential is terrifying. "Up," De Soto announces. The first kill with tungsten. Lambert whispers into the intercom headset, eyes locked on the lead Panther. "Gunner, you see that big cat on the road?" "About 900 yards. Gunner Walter Jeffries leans into the M76 sight, thumb on the trigger guard. "Got him." "Take your time," Lambert murmurs. "Make it count." Jeffries steadies his hand, lines up the crosshair on the Panther's glacis, the very spot every American tanker had cursed for months. "Send it," Lambert orders. Jeffries squeezes. Crack, whip. The HVAP round leaves the barrel at nearly 3,400 feet per second, streaking across the field like an invisible spear. A fraction of a heartbeat later. Clang, thunk, roar. A plume of sparks erupts from the Panther's noseplate. Then, astonishingly, the German tank shudders, stops, and black smoke pours from its driver's hatch. Lambert blinks. "Jesus, it went through." Jeffries stares through the sight, stunned. I saw daylight." "Sir, it punched clean through." De Soto whoops, slapping the breech. "That's right, baby. First one's on the house." The Hellcat crew can hardly believe it, a Panther killed from the front. At nearly 1,000 yards. By an American gun. Word spreads instantly across the intercom net. "This is C-15, Red, did you just drop a Panther head-on?" C-23 confirms. Tungsten round. Glacis shot. Holy hell. The battle intensifies. The German column reacts quickly. The second Panther swings its turret toward Lambert's position, long barrel slicing through the fog. Lambert shouts, "Driver! Back us into the dip!" The Hellcat lurches backward as a German 75mm round screams overhead, clipping branches with a violent snap. Jeffries keeps sight picture through the recoil. Second cat's looking right at us. Loader, HVAP again. De Soto jams the second silver-banded round into the breech. Up. Lambert risks a brief exposure above the lip of earth. Gunner, 600 yards now. "Take him." Jeffries fires. Crack, whip. The second HVAP shot slams into the Panther's turret face. The German tank spasms as a chunk of armor erupts backward inside the turret. A violent explosion follows, ammunition cook-off. "Kill confirmed." Jeffries shouts, almost disbelieving. "2 Panthers down." De Soto yells. "2." Lambert fights the urge to celebrate. "We've only got 1 tungsten left. Make it count." When tungsten runs out, a third Panther tries to flank left, using terrain depressions to mask its hull. The fog begins to thin, revealing more German armor pushing forward, half-tracks, infantry, another pair of Panthers. C-23 angles to fire again, but Lambert hesitates. Jeffries. "Sir?" Lambert's throat tightens. We can't shoot tungsten at this one. Too far. Too angled. We have to wait for a clean shot. The words feel bitter. They have exactly one M93 round left. One last chance for guaranteed penetration. The rest of their ammunition is standard AP, dangerously unreliable at range. As the 3rd Panther edges into view, Lambert makes his decision. Loader, give me APC. De Soto blinks. Sir? Not HVAP. Lambert shakes his head. That last one is for the biggest threat. We are not wasting it on a maybe. De Soto obeys, slamming a steel-cord APC round into the breech. Jeffries fires. The shot ricochets off the Panther's glacis with a shower of sparks. The German tank fires back immediately. The round slams into the ground just yards from the Hellcat, showering the vehicle with dirt and boiling dust. Lambert coughs. Back up. Back up. Get us behind the ridge. Hartmann throws the Hellcat into reverse, treads clawing for grip. The Panthers keep coming. The last tungsten shot. As C-23 crests the back slope of a small hill, Lambert sees the 4th Panther emerge, broadside, just 500 yards away. A perfect shot. A rare gift. Lambert doesn't hesitate. Loader. Tungsten, now. De Soto slams the final M93 into place. Up. Gunner, Lambert says, voice cold and calm, kill that cat. Jeffries fires. The HVAP round drills through the Panther's side armor as if it were plywood. The German tank erupts in black smoke, turret hatches bursting open as the crew bails in panic. 3 Panthers down, Jeffries whispers. 3, with 3 rounds. For a moment, the battlefield feels still again. But Lambert knows the truth. They are out of M93. Completely. And the battle is not over. What happens when the miracle runs dry? The remaining Panthers advance. C-23 and the other Hellcats are forced into a fighting retreat, falling back shot by shot, flanking where they can, calling for artillery support, using speed to survive. Lambert watches as 2 Hellcats from his company are knocked out, one by a long-range frontal shot, another by a flank hit that tears through the thin armor like tin foil. Every lost vehicle is a reminder. Tungsten changes battles. Scarcity decides them. When the fog finally lifts and the German 111th Panzer Brigade withdraws under pressure from American infantry and artillery, the battlefield tells a grim story. The 704th has survived. Barely. But their 3 tungsten kills become the talk of the battalion. A quiet realization settles among the officers that evening. Had they possessed more than 3 tungsten rounds, their entire engagement could have been one-sided. Decisively. Devastatingly. Instead, it was another day of attrition. Another day where American crews paid a price because industrial capacity and material scarcity decided how many lives could be saved, or lost. Ahead lies the winter of 1944, the drive into Germany, and Lieutenant Colonel Wilson M. Hawkins' growing frustration as his battalion continues to run short of the ammunition that could change the course of every engagement. The miracle existed. But getting enough of it to the battlefield would become a second war of its own. October 5, 1944. Watertown Arsenal, Massachusetts. The air is thick with heat and smoke, and the metallic scent of tungsten dust clings to every surface. Inside the massive machining hall, sparks fly as furnaces roar and presses stamp steel jackets for 76mm rounds. Engineers and metallurgists work tirelessly in a near-chaotic ballet, checking tolerances, pouring molten metal, and calibrating presses that weigh tons. Captain Leonard J. Webb, now returned from the Normandy test range, walks briskly down the aisle, notebook in hand. His eyes flick from one machine to another, noting failures, fractures, and inconsistencies. Core too brittle. Jacket cracked. Press misaligned, he mutters under his breath. Beside him, metallurgist Dr. William K. Harmon wipes soot from his glasses. They'll work, Leonard, eventually, Harmon says. Webb doesn't reply. He knows eventually may be too late. The material bottleneck. Tungsten, the miracle metal, is scarce. Its carbide form is almost incompressible, nearly as dense as gold, and almost impossible to machine without shattering. Each M93 core requires precision shaping, careful heat treatment, and a seamless jacket. Even minor imperfections can cause the round to fail catastrophically. The United States produces only a fraction of the global tungsten supply. The rest comes from China, Portugal, and the Congo, sources vulnerable to shipping disruption, sabotage, and wartime delays. War Production Board records show the allocations. Asterisk 45% for armor-piercing artillery. Asterisk 25% for naval applications. Asterisk 20% for industrial tooling. Asterisk 10% reserved for experimental tank rounds like the M93. Webb's team fights tooth and nail for every pound. He writes in his notebook that morning. Every pound rationed. Every round precious. Every shipment delayed risks lives on the front. From factory floor to front line. In September and October 1944, less than 1,000 M93 rounds reach Europe. The Army supply chain is a monstrous machine. Rounds must travel from arsenals to ports, cross the Atlantic aboard convoy ships, clear customs and staging depots in England, then be shipped to France, often under constant threat from Luftwaffe strikes, U-boats, and rail sabotage. For the tankers at Lunéville and later in Lorraine, this delay is critical. Lieutenant Colonel Wilson M. Hawkins, commanding the 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion, writes in his combat journal, "We have rounds that can kill Panthers, but we are rationed to 3 per vehicle. Today, we saw what can be done with them, and what is lost when we cannot distribute more. Every engagement becomes a calculus of risk. Commanders must decide. Asterisk use a tungsten round now on a long-range Panther and risk none left for later? Asterisk wait for the perfect shot while infantry suffers losses? Asterisk resort to standard M62 APC rounds and pray for ricochet or flank opportunities? Tactical adaptations. Because supply is constrained, American tank destroyer crews develop new tactics. 1. Shot prioritization. HVAP rounds are reserved for Panther Glacis or Tiger frontal engagements. Anything less is fired with standard steel AP. 2. Ambush over direct confrontation. Crews rely on terrain to hit enemy tanks from angles where standard AP may penetrate. 3. Coordination with artillery. HVAP rationing forces crews to combine indirect fire with limited direct fire, delaying decisive kills until artillery or infantry can engage. 4. Speed and maneuver. The M18 Hellcat's speed becomes a force multiplier. Crews exploit it to flank, fire once, and withdraw, conserving precious tungsten rounds. In essence, scarcity reshapes strategy as much as technology. The human cost. On the front lines, tankers begin to internalize a brutal truth. Technology alone does not win battles. Logistics does. Supply does. Industrial capacity does. Private Raymond Dole writes in a field diary after another engagement. We have the bullets that can kill the Germans before they kill us. But they are rare, like diamonds in the mud. We fire them sparingly. Every shot is weighed against the lives of the men in the next town, or the next tank down the lane. The tension inside every Sherman, Hellcat, and M36 is palpable. A 5-second decision with either a silver-banded miracle or a standard shell could mean life or death. Scaling production. Webb oversees one of the first major production runs of M93 rounds. Asterisk core shaping presses must be recalibrated daily to avoid cracking. Asterisk jackets are lined with annealed steel to prevent shattering on firing. Asterisk tungsten powders are pressed at extreme pressures, sintered in high-temperature furnaces, and coated with a protective nickel layer. Every step is labor-intensive. One mistake ruins the entire batch. A single shipment lost at sea or misrouted could represent months of work. The urgency grows after Lunéville. Commanders in Europe send increasingly desperate requests for tungsten. Hawkins Battalion asks for 100 rounds, knowing full well that only half that may arrive. General Staff discussions in London and Washington revolve around prioritization. Asterisk should M93 rounds go to frontline tank destroyers like the 704th, or to Sherman battalions supporting infantry? Asterisk should production be accelerated, risking shortages in other critical industries? Asterisk or should the Army ration, hoping tactical innovation compensates for scarcity? Every decision carries the weight of lives. The iron and tungsten ballet. In a sense, The war becomes a performance between industrial capability and tactical ingenuity. The M93 is the instrument of this ballet. Its success demonstrated on captured Panthers at Isigny. Its scarcity frustrating American crews in Normandy and Lorraine. Its eventual arrival marking pivotal moments in engagements against German armored formations. Webb and his engineers understand this better than anyone. The medal is just the beginning. The real victory is ensuring that each round reaches the men who need it, at the moment they need it. As October fades, the 704th and other battalions steel themselves for what lies ahead: winter fighting, Ardennes surprises, and the slow, grinding push into the Siegfried Line. The story of tungsten is now inseparable from the story of the men on the battlefield, where every ounce of metal may determine life or death. The rolling hills outside Lunéville, France. A chill mist hangs low, clinging to hedgerows and shell-pocked fields, the smell of smoke, wet earth, and machine oil thick in the air. Lieutenant Colonel Wilson M. Hawkins walks along a dirt path behind his 704th Tank Destroyer Battalion's positions. His boots sink into mud softened by early winter rains. His eyes are sharp, scanning the ridges, valleys, and tree lines where German Panthers might be hiding. He pauses by Captain Leonard Webb, who has arrived to consult on ammunition distribution. Webb carries a crate of the silver-banded M93 rounds like a reliquary. Hawkins' voice is low, terse. "Leonard, how many do we have left?" Webb flips the crate open. 75 rounds for the whole battalion. That's it. Hawkins exhales, the weight of command pressing down. That's barely 2 per tank. Webb shrugs. Do your best with them. Every other round is M62. Your crews know the limitations. Hawkins shakes his head. He thinks of Normandy. Of Lunéville last month. Of men killed because they lacked the means to kill back. The first engagements in Lorraine. That afternoon, reconnaissance reports alert the 704th to a German advance, a mixed column of Panthers and Tiger IS, moving cautiously along the forested ridge, flanked by half-tracks carrying infantry. Hawkins orders his battalion into hull defilade positions along the valley edge, using the tree line and depressions to mask their M18 Hellcats. The first contact is brief but brutal. Sergeant Harold Lambert, in C-23, sees the lead Panther emerge at 1,100 yards. He checks the ammo rack. 2 M93 HVAP rounds remaining. He swallows hard. The Hellcat shudders as the Panther fires first, the round detonating harmlessly in a ditch short of its mark. Lambert steadies his gun. Loader, first tungsten. Hit him center glacis. The M93 slams through the Panther's frontal armor with a flash of molten steel. Sparks and smoke erupt from the German tank's hull, and it shudders violently before coming to a halt, turret frozen. Corporal Frank de Soto slaps the breech. 1 down. 1 to go. The second Panther hesitates, scanning the valley. Lambert thinks fast. If I fire APC now, it might bounce. I wait, it might get us all killed. 1 HVAP left. The tension is almost unbearable. Every crew member understands that this single shot carries the weight of survival for the next 5 minutes, maybe hours. The calculus of scarcity. The Lorraine campaign forces tankers to make impossible choices. Tungsten rounds. Scarce, precious, guaranteed penetration. APC steel rounds. Abundant, but often ineffective against frontal Panther armor. Time and exposure. Each second spent lining up a shot risks return fire. Lieutenant Colonel Hawkins writes in his journal, "I spend more time calculating when and where to fire than the men do aiming." This is not just strategy, it is rationing life itself. Crews begin creating informal shot lists, prioritizing. 1. Lead German tanks that could pin down infantry. 2. Heavy armor directly threatening their positions. 3. Targets at optimal range for HVAP success. Every miscalculation carries immediate consequences. The tactical impact of M93. Despite scarcity, the impact of even a few rounds is dramatic. German Panthers hesitate, knowing American crews now have the ability to kill them frontally. Infantry advances with more confidence when HVAP-equipped tank destroyers are present. Crews adapt. They lie in wait, use hull defilade, and coordinate with artillery to compensate for limited ammo. In one harrowing instance, Lambert's last HVAP round strikes the side of a Panther attempting to flank his position at 600 yards. The tank explodes in a ball of fire, halting the German advance. The battalion breathes relief, but the psychological effect is just as profound. The fear of the American tungsten round now enters German calculations. The lessons learned. Combat in Lorraine solidifies several truths about M93 and HVAP rounds. 1. One round can turn the tide of an engagement, especially against a Panther in open terrain. 2. Scarcity dictates strategy. Even the best ammunition is useless if it cannot reach the front. 3. Industrial capacity becomes a battlefield factor. Production and supply are as decisive as gunnery skill. 4. Crew discipline and tactical patience are magnified. A wasted HVAP round is a lost opportunity and a potential death sentence. Lieutenant Colonel Hawkins reflects in a letter to Division Command. We have the means to defeat Panther armor head-on, but the flow of ammunition is the true measure of our effectiveness. Until tungsten supply improves, every engagement is a test of nerves, judgment, and luck. A turning point in strategy. By late December 1944, with the Ardennes offensive looming, commanders across the U.S. Army recognized that tungsten ammunition is no longer just experimental, it is a tactical necessity. March engagements, the M93 in action. At 9:15, forward scouts report a small German column moving along the riverbank. Panthers and Panzer IVs, the first line of defense for a crumbling German holdout. Hawkins orders the battalion into ambush positions behind earthen embankments and tree lines. Sergeant Harold Lambert in C-23 whispers to his crew, 2 HVAP rounds. Save the first for the lead Panther. The rest, use APC if you have to. The tension is unbearable. Every round fired, every movement made, carries potential consequences. A miscalculated shot can kill or be wasted, and there is no guarantee of resupply before the next engagement. The lead Panther emerges at 900 yards. Lambert sights carefully, loads the first HVAP round. Crack! Every victory is measured not just by destroyed tanks, but by the efficient use of precious resources. Industrial innovation meets battlefield reality. Back in the United States, engineers at Watertown and Frankfurt arsenals continue refining HVAP production. Tungsten cores are pressed more precisely, reducing cracking. Jacket metallurgy improves for higher velocities. Manufacturing throughput increases, but every shipment still takes weeks to reach front lines. The lag between innovation and battlefield impact is stark. German confidence erodes, their armor no longer invincible. Hawkins writes in his final March report, "The silver-banded shells have decisively affected morale and engagement tactics. Where we could not previously engage Panthers head-on without risk, we now dictate the terms of battle, even with minimal rounds. The cost of innovation and scarcity. Victory comes at a price. For every tank destroyed with tungsten, countless crews fought with inadequate ammunition, improvising, and sometimes dying unnecessarily. Logistics and production had to catch up to the technological leap that M93 represented. The war demonstrated a harsh truth. Innovation alone cannot win the fight. Industrial capacity dictates the reach of technology. Scarcity forces discipline, sacrifice, and adaptation on the battlefield. The men of the 704th and countless other units embody that truth daily, fighting both the enemy and the constraints of supply. A legacy etched in silver bands. As the Allies enter central Germany in April 1945, Hawkins' battalion and others like it continue to employ HVAP rounds. Each engagement reinforces a lesson long known in ordnance labs but painfully learned on the battlefield. Technology changes the possibilities of war, but only logistics decides the reality. The M93 high-velocity armor-piercing round, with its tungsten core and distinctive silver band, is no longer experimental. It has become a symbol. Of the ingenuity of American engineers. Of the bravery and skill of tank crews. Of the unyielding constraints of industrial production. Asterisk and of the fine line between life and death that a single round could define. Epilogue, looking back. The Normandy tests at Isigny, the desperate rationing in Lorraine, and the final engagements of 1945 illustrate a singular narrative in armored warfare, the interplay of metallurgy, industrial capacity, and battlefield strategy determined outcomes as much as tactics and courage. Tungsten may have been rare, but it reshaped the armored war in Europe. Every silver-banded shell that struck a Panther or Tiger from the front was proof that technological innovation, no matter how delayed or rationed, could finally give American crews the fighting chance they deserved. As Lieutenant Colonel Hawkins reflected in March 1945, the M93 is more than a shell. It is a testament to ingenuity and sacrifice, to the men who waited for it, and to the men who never did. And thus, the silver-banded shell became legend, a small, hard piece of metal that finally tipped the scales in the war against the Panther, and reminded the world that, in war, every resource counts.